submitted. Did you submit?
I created one, yes.
You created one? Oh my God, we have a full technology slide already here. This is lovely. And so I just want to make you guys aware that all right, so Zaki, would you like to come up front? Thank you. Lovely. Oh my God, we have another really, really lovely panel here. Okay, everyone. First of all, I want to remind you that by now we have already made it such that you can find many of the technology trees already somewhat filled in with the individual tech nodes that the speakers are working on. So if you want to grab, fill out your node and add it already to the technology tree of your choice, we have space, neurotech, we have biotech, computing and molecular machines over there. And so that at the end of the day, we can do a happy merry-go-round with all of them. But for now, I'm very, very, very happy to be welcoming my next panel here. And today, we'll be talking in this panel about the intelligent cooperation topic of decentralized computing. And so thank you all so much for joining. We have oh, wow. We have 4 Foresight Fellows on the same stage. Amazing. Wow. OK, I'm very, very happy to have you guys here. OK, so let's see. We have Kate filling in the first slide. So why don't we just start out with you, explaining us a little bit what it is that you're working on, where do you see it going on the very, very long run, and then we'll see if we find a few connections across you guys. OK, Kate, bring it on.
All right. Hi, everyone. I'm Kate Sills. I'm a software engineer working in the area of smart contracts and blockchains. And what I'm particularly interested in right now is credible commitments. And what I mean by a credible commitment is how do we allow people to rely on the promises that we make and the assertions that we make. And so this goes all the way back to Thomas Schelling, the economist. He talked about credible commitments. So an example might be, you're a general trying to get your army to fight. And something that you can do as a credible commitment is burn the bridge behind you so that you can't retreat. And your army is definitely going to fight, right? So that's very credible, and it's also very much a commitment. So that's just one of the mechanisms that you might use. You might also use, of course, legal contracts. You might use smart contracts. You might use community reputation. There are many mechanisms that you might use to make a credible commitment. But I think what the most interesting thing is that in the past, 20, 30 years or so, we have all of this new technology, public key cryptography, we have smart contracts that allow us to make credible commitments, and they allow us to do so relatively cheaply, right? Access to the legal system is very expensive. A lot of people don't have access to justice. So what I am very interested in is using credible commitments to be able to create new institutions, to be able to fund public goods, and ultimately to be able to cooperate with people across state boundaries, across country borders, things like that. So I think we need to look at the toolkit that we have. So public key cryptography, blockchains, the legal system, reputation, all of those things, and try to look at the problems that we have as a society and see how we can solve those things. And it might not need a blockchain in some cases. So I'll give a quick example of that. So on Ethereum, there's the proof of attendance protocol. So I think this is a great organization. It seems like a very worthwhile thing to do. But what it's basically doing is saying that I have attended an event. An event organizer is minting an NFT, gives it to me to say that I have attended that event. Well, we can actually do that without a blockchain with just cryptography, right? I sign a statement, and the event organizer signs on top of that saying that I attended. So there might be things that we can do even more cheaply than through a blockchain, just using cryptography. So that's what I'm interested in, is using the whole toolkit that we have.
Lovely. Thank you so much, Kate. And if you guys want to dive deeper into her work, then I recommend, she gave a fantastic Foresight presentation as a fellow in the Intelligent Corporation group, which I think got much hurrah on Twitter afterwards. So thanks a lot for that one. And yeah, it was a really good one. That one was particularly on NFTs for reimagining property rights. But I think it fits really nicely in with the credible commitments topic as well. Lovely. Another one, also the Intelligent Corporation intro video with Mark. I think you explain credible commitments really nicely with a bridge over many of the collective action problems that we're worried about. So if you're interested in that, I encourage you to check out actually our Intelligent Corporation seminar summaries. We have all of the seminar summaries of that entire year there. Okay, next one up, we have another Foresight fellow who recently presented and also gained lots of traction through the presentation, including someone, Glenn Whale, sending me an email afterwards saying, like, this is the best presentation I've seen this entire year in the group. So Christine, wow, that is, I think, very high praise. So Christine, tell us a little bit what you are working on at the moment and how it is that other people can help.
Hi, so I'm Christine Lemmer-Rubber, and I work on decentralized networking technology, but especially decentralized social networks. I think that the current state of social networks is incredibly bad and not supportive of people and communities and so on. And I'm guessing, actually, whether or not you've thought about it, everyone else here probably feels that too. I want to see how many people the following statement resonates with. Being on modern social network sites today feels kind of like the worst part of Thanksgiving dinner every day of the year. So raise your hand if this kind of resonates with you. That's a substantially large amount of the audience, and that's kind of a disturbing state to be in, I think. And I don't think that the current systems that we have support kind of the idea of the many different roles we have in our lives. And everyone these days, I think, is very frustrated with gatekeepers. So I've been working on decentralized social networks for about a decade, and when I started, it didn't seem like that many people were that worried about it, except for, our hyper-technology nerds. But that's definitely changed now, right? We're now at the point where, in early days, so when large decentralized social networks really started to ramp up, and many people were very worried about the effects that they might cause, I don't think we really saw them quite as quickly as we have today, where we have what's called context collapse, which really removes your ability to be yourself in the different circumstances of your life. What's happened since then is enough people are upset that we even see, centralization kind of interpreted as a pathogen, right? So the recent interest by governments in terms of centralized organizations being gatekeepers on our information can be kind of perceived as an immune response by the body, as in terms of the way that things have gone badly. So I think it's highly fixable, though, but that's a pretty bold claim. So can I back that up? Well, I feel like I can. So first of all, I'm co-author of the most popular decentralized social networking protocol currently on the web, which is ActivityPub. Right, so that's used by Mastodon and so on. And actually, when we finished standardizing that at the World Wide Web Consortium about 3 years ago, I actually felt like we're not really done. I feel like there's all these things that we can't do in terms of privacy, security, rich interactions and cooperation between people. And I went searching through history to find out, well, where had those problems been solved before? And I found that actually they had been solved. So before the centralized social approaches ended up taking off, there were people who worked at these wacky organizations, like this one called Electric Communities, which I know there's a number of people in the audience who worked at. Yep, and one of the and they were really pushing for this vision that everything would be peer-to-peer, that you'd really control things, that you'd have commerce integrated, and they actually built lots of the solutions. So when I started searching, I was suddenly raving to people about these papers that I found that were 25 years old, and people were saying, well, if those papers are so good, if these approaches are so good, why aren't all the big players using them? And the reason is they don't have the incentives to use them, right? It turned out that the easiest way to be able to build and deploy these systems was a centralized approach. You could get the kind of approach that people were talking about and interested in into the hands of users relatively quickly. But over about 15 years, people start to experience all the really bad things that happen when you end up taking that approach, right? And now we're in kind of a crisis moment. So those approaches that have been researched for a long time ago in the object capability security community ended up becoming very relevant. And I'm very lucky to have met people like Mark Miller and Chip Morningstar and Randy Farmer and even Zuko, who have all been involved in the object capability security community and were willing to take the time to talk with me about these things. And in fact, when I joined Foresight this year as a fellow, Allison asked me, well, what do you want to do this year, Christine? And I said, well, I've been doing this research project for about 3 years, getting all the pieces together, and I'd really like to actually turn this into an organization. So by the end of the year, I'd like to turn this into an organization. And during the course of that, actually, Randy Farmer and I started talking a lot more, and Randy, along with Chip, co-ran electric communities back in the day and was very interested that his face kept showing up in my presentations. So we started talking more, and we are now, just a couple days ago, Randy filed the incorporation paperwork. So the Spritely Institute is going to be a legal entity, and we're going to make this happen. So thank you.
Leave us with a challenge you want to see solved, so we can move over to Jazear.
Right. So the challenge is we have right now we need to get interested partners to launch this off the ground. We have a technical partner with Agoric. We're very excited to work with them on the technology side. And the Filecoin Foundation for the Decentralized Web has come in as a fiscal sponsor, but we need more people who are willing to help us bring this off the ground, because this is a making new layers for the internet, which means it's a common situation, and that's often very tragic. So we want to undo the tragedy of that and we want to actually make stuff that can be usable for everyone. So if this feels like it appeals to you, please come speak to us, and let's make it happen.
And Christine, you will be at the decentralized computing node over there doing the breakouts. Okay?
That's right.
Great. Lovely. Next one up, Jazear, another Foresight Fellow. What have you been up to? What is a long-term goal you're wanting to solve? And how could other people help? What are some capabilities you want to unlock? What are some enabling technologies you may need?
Cool. Hi, everybody. I'm Jazear. And I often think about cryptocurrencies and AI. I believe that cryptocurrencies allow for people to exchange value in a way that's private and guaranteed-ish to happen, but that we haven't taken as much advantage as I'd like for what that means for spend. There are a lot of people who are becoming crypto rich by participating in DeFi, and they don't necessarily have guidance on what to do with that money in a way that a well-funded research program, even if it's very minor for tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars, could bring them. And so I've actually piggybacked on this concept of decentralized autonomous marketplaces. I believe actually an Andreessen partner originally coined the phrase, but what it means is a decentralized autonomous organization, a DAO, that's really focused on the needs of the members of that group as they exist in a marketplace, which is very different from what I think DAOs are now and communities are now. In both cases, there's actually a deeper focus on, hey, Allison?
Yeah, just bring up the seminar that you did on this.
Oh.
In case people want to find out more, they can.
Perfect, perfect. Okay. So hopefully I can remember what was on my tech tree. I think I got it though. But yeah, there's, oh, I have so much stuff on there. Okay. So the point is that I believe that a decentralized autonomous marketplace is something where people express their needs for what it is they want to buy beyond or what they want to do in the way that they buy or sell things. And I believe that a lot of people's desires and expressions are actually just placed in the market. If the market collectively can be intelligent in doing resource allocation, then people at the scale of hundreds or thousands or even beyond that can do the kind of purchasing, buying, selling, and so on that is usually reserved for companies or large groups, and have the corresponding social impact and the like, but do it in a way that may be more intelligent than they would have come up with for themselves, because often a smaller group of people than the entire market is dealing with decision-making process for those kinds of things. What we end up with is autonomous funding of critical problems. This whole skill tree concept, I think, is going to do wonders for this concept, the idea that you can just look at what everyone else is planning in their lives and fund the things that are most relevant to you so you can collaborate more efficiently. Hyper-personalization of goodwill. If you want to just take care of your friends or your family or your company or so on, or the society at large, you can do it in a way that's very, very focused on your beliefs or on the beliefs of the recipient, and avoid a lot of this regression to the mean that I think a lot of charity or just general goodwill can fall under. And I think that goodwill is such a tremendous thing to fund, such a tremendous source of funding, that we'd actually see a lot of value from that. And then financialization of advanced self-development. So for all of us here who are trying to lose weight or become smarter or whatever, like financializing those things would give a really strong incentive for it, but in a way that's like actually relevant, kind of like what gamification sort of promised to be maybe in the Web 2.0 phase, but I think is not even really scratched the surface around Web 3. And then at the end, we end up with rational, optimized portfolio allocations. So you're holding things that are actually like beneficial for you, in not just the mimetic sense or even like the financial growth sense, but also in growth in other ways. And then we get rational, optimized market outcomes. So the things that collectively we all want to get done are actually done. That's my work.
Easy, okay. And you don't really have one undifferentiated challenge. It's just all happening. It's good. Okay, lovely. Josh, what are you working on and how may other people help? What do you see as the long-term goals there? Very happy to have you on as a 2022 fellow. Very excited about it. Thanks for coming.
Thank you for having me. Hi, folks. I'm Josh. I feel like I don't really have much to talk about because all the previous speakers were so excellent on the different aspects of what I guess I do at MetaGov. Kate was talking about credible commitments. Christine was talking about the sort of technical layer that we're all trying to build as a common good. And Jazear was so much better at me explaining like the importance of financialization and financial sort of processes in the governance of online communities, especially communities like DAOs, which are named up there in the Web3/blockchain space. So a bit about me. I'm Josh, computer scientist and mathematician at Stanford and Oxford. I also run an organization called MetaGov, and I leading a process to define a new ERC standard for DAOs, actually, in collaboration with a lot of industry groups in the ecosystem. So DAOs, they're kind of like a big hype thing at the moment. People don't, like you put 10 experts in a room and they will have 10 opinions about what a DAO actually is. So rather than me trying to put a definition on it or a nice little label, maybe just the one takeaway that I want you all to leave this panel, I suppose, or my little part of it with is DAOs are the nexus of governance innovation today. They are where so many new experiments and innovations are happening. And that's for a lot of different reasons, both because of the kind of magical intersection of both technologists and people who really, really care about community and good governance, but also because of I think the economic underpinnings of crypto. When you actually have, $10,000 or $100 million in the bank, you just make different kinds of decisions, and the decisions have a very different weight that create a different need for governance that we've seen so far on the internet. And it's a really spectacular and amazing, I think, time to be involved in this space. And I really encourage all of you to start a DAO, why not?
Yeah.
In terms of a challenge, standardization across DAO frameworks. I would say actually a lot of like DAO tooling, we don't need to go all the way down the rabbit hole, but a lot of the MVP tooling has already been developed for DAOs. Things like voting, prediction markets, and some of them. But I think the one key challenge is to articulate a kind of the right design philosophy or the right design language for how we put together these, let's say, socio-technical constructs. It's a fancy piece of jargon, but it's just saying that, think about how companies run. Companies are almost like a little bit like robots with circuits and sort of this logic, and if we would talk about like sort of like business logic in these companies. DAOs, and this is one of the best analogies I've seen so far, is that they're almost like how we design, like how a cell operates, right? It's much more statistical. There's like operations that are flowing, there's gradients involved where cells are flowing this way, ribosomes moving together with enzymes to produce some sort of protein at the end, and you can't predict what's going to happen unless, you have like a ton of observations. So this kind of more organic design philosophy over how we build and design and think about these new kinds of online communities, I think that's a really spectacular, it's a really hard challenge I think the community is going to have to face in the next year or so.
Great. Okay, a large challenge for the community. And last but definitely not least, Zaki. I think, Zaki, you joined at the last maybe in-person gathering that we had, which was 2 years ago, and gave a fantastic talk on Cosmos and a few of the projects you guys are working on for building more of a multiplicity of blockchains. And I think you have now moved on to work on really fantastic and very relatable, I think, long-term projects that really have the eye in mind that like what we ultimately need is more than just perhaps one blockchain. So tell us a little bit more about what you're working on and how it relates to the long-term future.
Yeah, so my name is Zaki. So like in 2019, when I was talking here, it was still sort of a idea that there would be many intercommunicating blockchains. Over the last 2 years, that's become a reality. And so that's been very gratifying to be like, so I guess, but it is interesting to like come back to like what is the fundamental reason why there should be many blockchains. Blockchains are like shared community computers. So you think of this as analogous to the personal computing revolution. Before we had blockchains, we had before you had computers that were owned by large corporations, and people could use them. And then you had personal computing where people got sovereign control over their own computers. So now we have community computers, and community computers are settlement infrastructure. They allow people to have sort of do economically meaningful transactions among their community members and get them to be like finalized and effectuated in a way that was previously only accessible by like interacting with the large corporation that has an IBM mainframe that like will settle your stock trades or your bank transfers or that kind of stuff. And so that's basically what I build is like community-based ground up settlement infrastructure and then the systems to interoperate between settlement systems. And so it's really cool that people are doing this now. And that makes me very excited. But there's a lot of work to be done on how these systems compose together. We have like the Hello World or the email app, which is like wrapped tokens moving between blockchains. But we don't really have any more sophisticated application protocols yet. And that is primarily what I am working on across a variety of different like organizations and structures and DAOs and everything, is how do you get application protocols that compose between multiple blockchains and do interesting behavior rather than just rather than like the email app of wrapping a token and like moving it from one blockchain to another.
Wow, fantastic. Do you have a challenge that you want anyone to solve? Or are you just like, nope, things are moving along, this is happening?
Well, I mean, things are, like, this is happening. Like, I started working on this 5 years ago, and it didn't seem like it was happening, and a lot of people thought it wouldn't happen. But now it is happening, and it is good. Probably not enough people are still trying to figure out blockchain development. And I really think the frontier is, like, multi-chain development. Which is a hard problem and probably could require more people using it.
Okay, so more people on the challenge. Anyone on the panel want to react to each other? Nodding, disagreeing, yeah. And anyone here has a question, comment? Yeah, we have Mark.
For Jazear, I was surprised by the box that said financialized advanced self-development. I'm not sure I'm imagining what that means. So could you expand on that? What does it mean to financialize self-development?
So I have a lot of somewhat advanced plans for this. My day job is focused on a specific chain in the Cosmos network and getting basic trading and things like that pushed forward. So I haven't shared as much of it, but I'll try to paint a picture for you and hopefully it makes sense. There's a lot in traditional microeconomics, like game theory, decision theory, that kind of thing, that focuses on what a rational agent wants, which is some form of like utility optimization. And there are all these things that they would do if they were actually able to get utility that they wouldn't otherwise. The mapping between those kinds of systems and the financial markets are that people don't get utility, they get money. And money has different utility for people at different points in time. But theoretically, if you could get people to do something for any incentive, money is the best one. And there are so many games or situations that game theorists, like microeconomists, actually have solutions for or could easily derive solutions for that we don't get to see because we can't really do financial transactions at that level. So the existence of a liquidity pool as a primitive is one, but there are countless others. Actually, one that I want to shout out is Kate's, this idea, she didn't exactly explain it here, but this idea of self-binding commitment. Basically, I say I'm going to do something, and if I do it, then I get money, and it may be my own money, but at least there's some kind of financialization for it. That has worked. There's a company called Stacks that does this, they're worth tens of millions of dollars. They're not on the chain. I do think that if you have that plus public awareness of what you've done, maybe proof of location, proof of activity, the reputation that other people are putting behind the act that they witnessed you do it and so on. If you start doing things like that, now all of a sudden I can say, I will wake up earlier than I have before, and if I do, I'll win $10,000, right? Now all of a sudden your behavior starts to change. And so I think when it comes to self-development, what I've seen, and probably a lot of other people have seen, is like, there are just some things that I can't get myself to do unless there's some kind of elaborate thing. A lot of it involves social pressure. Maybe it involves taking on a risk that I don't really want to take or whatever. If you really just make it so you can earn 10, 100, 1,000, 100,000, whatever it is, dollars for doing something really novel, then all of a sudden you start to do it. People are incentivized to help you do it. And so at the end of the day, all these systems that game theorists have come up with to get you to do things, I think, become applicable, and then we see radical behavior change. I hope that made sense.
All right, lovely. Yes, please. Has a thumbs up. Okay, Christine, do you want to make a quick final point, and then?
Oh, okay. So I was going to respond to the multi-chain thing, actually, and say that I think this is actually at the heart of. I think it's actually largely solved in terms of the technical architecture of it. But this is actually at the heart of where I think a lot of attention is missing in decentralized technology right now. A lot of decentralized technology is focused on what we call, we don't have good terms for this yet, we're kind of workshopping them, but convergent decentralization, right? A blockchain, it's a world of people all running one machine, abstractly. They're all agreeing on one machine. There's different ways of doing things, like email, you're sending email to another person, you don't actually maybe even know what that thing's like running over there, right? ActivityPub works this way also, right? And this is a different kind of decentralization where things are separate from you. You might not even know how they work. They're operating autonomously and independently. And it turns out Agoric figured out the right abstraction of how to generalize these two worlds. Because the OCAP community already had the idea of how to do the distributed opaque encapsulated actors with interesting behavior that collaborate together. But then the brilliant solution is you just treat a blockchain as one abstracted machine on the network talking to other abstracted machines. So I actually think we have the right solution, and I'm really optimistic about it. And I think that in order to really solve a lot of the problems, we need to actually start looking at where both of those things solve the different parts of the problems that we need to fix.
Any comments on that, Zaki? Yes, no, agree, disagree?
Yeah, I know. We just implemented CapTP.
Woo! Okay, great. I'm liking that we're ending here on a high note. Okay, well, so I do want to say all of the technology nodes of people here on the panel have already been added to the Cryptocommerce and AI tree over there. And I want to let you know that in case any of this piqued your interest, then, just as a reminder, all of our individual technology groups are on the website, and you can open up each individual seminar summary, for example, here, and you will get redirected to all of the different seminar summaries for each of the different discussions that we had throughout the entire year. So whenever any of this piqued your interest, we usually had a seminar on this in that group. Okay, thank you so much for this panel. I will please, I will ask you kindly and nicely to please be at your note around 4 after the last panel is over, because that's the time when people can actually get to talk to you about the slides that you're building, where you'll be moving slides around and figuring out how your work relates to each other. Okay, thank you so much. Thanks a lot for coming up on stage for this.